Hey everyone, we'll wait a few minutes for people to trickle in, and then probably get started in about 3 minutes. All right, gonna give folks one more minute to trickle in, and then I will get started. All right, welcome everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm Spencer. I'm one of the scorecard maintainers, and I am today's moderator. So I'll just be going through and keeping us on the agenda. Please fill out the attendee list in the working group notes. The link has changed since our last meeting. The Linux Foundation has moved some documents around, trying to get them into shared folders that they control, so that when people change companies, it's not as much of an issue with people not having access to docs. And the benefit now is that people can have access to this doc without needing to join the Scorecards dev Google group. So hopefully that's easier for people to check on the meeting notes. If you haven't already, please fill your name for the attendees section. And normally we provide a little time at the beginning for anyone that's new to the group to optionally introduce themselves, say what they're hoping to get out of Scorecards, attending the sync, contributing to Scorecard, etc. So if there's anyone that wants to introduce themselves now, I'll take a little bit of time to pause. All right, I'm seeing mainly familiar faces in the chat, so I will go ahead and start with the, sorry, just reading the some of the agendas. One thing, I guess first in the agenda is something that I'm proposing, where previously in the meetings, so if you scroll back to November or so, maybe not November, I think it was probably January, but we made a scoring change to code review that ended up affecting more of our repositories than we thought. So we ended up having this issue where we'd like to catch scenarios where scoring changes are catch us by surprise, and then we have to react to them. So the solution starts based on something a contributor had done in some of their PRs, where they say, this is the change I'm making, and based on some 300 sites, the score changes in this way. So I'm proposing a design document. This is a 2-page doc trying to say, this is how I'm going to solve this problem of saying, if we're proposing a scoring change, we should have a good way of making sure that it's not affecting every repo and we didn't know it would do that. And it boils down to having something that we run Scorecard against a set of repos and then compare it to expected results and then flagging any differences. So I won't go through the entire doc, but it's pretty short. It's 2 pages. But I'm proposing a tool that will be stored in the Scorecard repo and centers around a tool to generate results. This is just running Scorecard on, say, the 250, 300, I'm open on numbers, repos that we want to check, a tool to compare 2 sets of results. And I'm just envisioning storing the JSON results that Scorecard produces, maybe in a certain combined structure, but this is the JSON that people are used to seeing when they run Scorecard. So compare will do the diff and highlight results. Stats might be a nice way to visualize, saying like X repos got a score 0, Y repos got a score 2, etc. And then some sort of command to say, I've looked at the differences. I accept that this is some sort of change that we want to see. And then there's some commands saying that it could operate on a subset of checks. So the goal is that when a scoring change is proposed, one of the maintainers will maybe label the PR in a way that kicks off this workflow and says, you're changing code review. So let me run the code review test on these 300 repos and see if the scoring distribution changes in a way that we weren't expecting. Yeah, so this is the document. It's open for comments by all. All right, sorry to see Pedro's thing. Hopefully everyone can see the screen share. If anyone has any high-level thoughts, I'd welcome them now, but otherwise the doc is open to comments by anyone. So I'm always open to coming back to this at a next meeting if we don't reach sort of a consensus or anything. Yeah, Pedro.
So I mean, just to clarify, this here is not so much to detect changes in scores, but to study the impact of changing the score. Like scoring changes will be detected by unit tests, but the idea is for this year to see, okay, and this is actually, we thought this was going to be a small change, but it actually decimated everyone's code review scores. Is that the idea?
Yeah, so like we have unit tests and we have end-to-end tests right now that look at individual repos or individual files, depending on the check. And when we're making these changes, those tests get modified because they need to in order for the CI/CD to pass. But someone says, oh, I wanted to make this change, so yeah, the score is going to change, but they only check it against one repo. Whereas by running it against, say, 100 or 200 or something like that, you get a better idea of like, wait a minute, like a lot of repos aren't doing this. So is this scoring change going to like affect scores more than the unit tests could catch?
And would these, would the Goldens, would they be like live projects? We would, I don't know, have like NumPy and other live popular projects. And then we run the check on using the old version of Scorecards, and we run the check with the new version of Scorecards and do a diff. Or would we have like 100 or 200 forks that are static at a given commit that we know what the scores are meant to be.
So I had envisioned doing it on live repositories because it gives a better sample of what people are doing instead of just something static. It does have some downsides of changes being made outside of scorecard code changes. So a project could, for example, say like I'm no longer doing code review or start doing code review, and then the score would change outside of our control. I think your strategy of running scorecard again on an older version to sort of eliminate that would work, but I was envisioning storing the results with the repository as the set of goldens to cut down on having to rerun scorecard. But it does run into those scenarios where if a repository changes, outside of scorecard's control, then that could potentially cause a golden test failure. Which is one reason I was trying to make it easy to update this. And if these live repositories start being a problem, then we can revisit the strategy. Yeah, Jeremy.
So looking at the alternatives with the nightly run being a bigger set, I wonder if there's like a belt and suspenders thing, that there's there is both this that can be done kind of on demand, but similarly integrating it into the nightly run.
Yeah, it definitely could be part of the nightly run. So somewhere in the document, I have something that says like, this would also be good to run, yeah, like weekly or something like that, where even if something isn't being proposed or we're not about to cut a release, just sort of make sure that our goldens are accurate.
Yeah.
I did copy this from a internal doc that I was just noodling in, so I might not have copied that bit over, but I will say that having a weekly scan either in GitHub or in the cron makes sense to me. I think there's some benefits of doing it in the cron, as our token quota there is a bit higher than what our repository might have. But I will add that, yes.
Yeah. And I also thought about given the random subset in the nightly, I wonder if there's something interesting if the nightly was like 5,000, but it's 2,500 random one day and the 2,500 from yesterday. So it's basically just a moving set. And then you could actually compare it on the nightly basis, which would get some of the potentially some of the outliers that might not be in the golden set. If you just think of a sliding window effectively.
Yeah, based on how the random repositories are picked, I think that would require some sort of re-architecting, but not re-architecting, but we'd have to change how the random
They'd have to be
files are
persistent
picked.
somehow. But that might be an easy way to get a little bit more just of the outliers.
Yeah, and even if we don't do like a rolling window, there could still be like 2,500 fixed repositories and 2,500 random. So it doesn't necessarily have to be 25 from the previous day. It could just be like a known 2,500. Yeah, Pedro.
Just on that point of the randoms, like it sounds good, but how would that work with the idea of having fixed scores for projects? Or I mean, would we just be relying on the cron jobs scores from Monday when we're running the Friday nightly?
So I'm not sure if, so right now the cron checks a random subset, and what the nightly is doing is like image promotion from latest to stable that the rest of the cron uses. So another problem that I haven't mentioned is that the cron is set up in a way to just saying, like, did the runs succeed without hitting a runtime error? And these golden tests are looking to answer a different question, not just did the runs succeed, but did the scores change? So I could see part of the cron being, I'm going to save all these results, which it does anyway. And then a new piece, say, I'm going to grab a portion of these outputs and diff them. But yeah, there is a bit of a question on what do we diff against. All right. So is anyone thinking like this is a terrible idea? Is this, misguided? Should or is people thinking, this is generally the right idea? I might, read through this later and leave a comment. I'm just trying to get some ideas before I start actually writing code. But I see some thumbs up.
As a maintainer of a project that uses Scorecard, I would find this useful if I could check scores over time, which is something that is a lot of picky work right now. I realize that's not the target use case. So I actually want to ask about that. Is the target functionality related to maintenance of Scorecard more than usage of Scorecard?
It's primarily aimed at saying, I have 2 points in time and I want to see if there are any differences in score between them. It can be used to, I thought like, oh, if I pass in 2 data sets, I can visualize them both. Are you familiar with the BigQuery data set?
No.
Okay, so if you go to the scorecard README, let me find my right tab. So in the README, there is something about public data here. And one of these queries is, you may be interested in how a project score has changed over time. So there is a BigQuery query right here, where I'm looking at the scorecard repo and I'm going to order it by date, because we stick all of the weekly runs into a table ordered by date. So you can sort of graph that and see how a project's score has changed over time if it's in the cron job, or like part of the 1.2 repos that 1.2 million that we looked at each week.
The use case for me would be situations where I'm not sure how a change will affect a score, and I'm looking to experiment.
Then, yeah, I think that's the same as what we're trying to catch here, is that, someone is proposing a change and they want to see how it affects the score for n repos. But the change being a change in scorecard code, but I guess it could be a change in like repo administration too. So like if you wanted to apply some change to X GitHub repos, you could have a run saved from before and then make the change and then do it again and see how it changes. But it's kind of like reactive in that sense.
Yeah, so in that sense, I would thumbs up this from a perspective of the kind of work that I do as something that's useful if that use case was supported.
Cool. Yeah. I think in the interest of time, it looks like we have a pretty full agenda. I will probably shoot you a Slack message if you're in the Slack. Otherwise, I can.
Yes.
Okay. But yeah.
Thanks, Spencer.
All right. Cool. So moving on, next is about unpinned dependencies and unprivileged workflows. Jogo?
Hey, folks. So yeah, I wanted to bring some attention to this issue. I am currently assigned to it, but I'm not sure whether we want to have this implemented and how. The original idea was to have either 0 or a lighter decrease on the score on pin dependencies if the unpinned action doesn't have any dangerous permission. So if you have like read-only permission or just content read permission, so it could be unpinned if the maintainer wants. There are some branches here, like maybe just reduce some very small score, like 0.1 or something like this, or just not reduce at all. But the point that was brought up in this discussion is that there's the action, from GitHub, upload action, upload artifact, and this doesn't require any permission. It can be used by read-only permission, or I think even with no permission at all. And this action is used in some scenarios for critical processes. I have this example in which some workflow creates the build, uploads it using the upload artifact action, and another workflow downloads this artifact. So this could still be a very dangerous workflow if they're not pinned. So they have all read-only permissions, doesn't have any secret, but is still a critical piece of code, and so they should be pinned. So yeah, I brought this up to get to know what maintainers think of it, and you think of it. Should we go ahead with this idea? Have some, how can I say, lower decrease of the score. Like currently, if you don't pin action that is used with write permission, and or if you not pin action used with read permission, you have the same decrease amount of score. Do we want to change that or not? I think that's a question.
All right. So going to your first question about unpinned dependencies and unprivileged workflows, I think it's unfortunate, that the permission model lets this be a problem. But thank you for finding a example of like how a repository uses this. I guess so like it makes it hard because we can check like, do any of the repositories in this, or do any of the workflows in this repository call upload action or download action or something like that? But there's still the issue of like indirection where like, maybe you call a workflow that calls upload or a workflow that calls download.
I mean, a read-only action has many safe and valid reasons to upload artifacts, like just uploading the results of some kind of scan or something like that.
Yeah. I think, yeah.
One thing that just occurred to me, like to catch this specific case where the artifact is generated but is then automatically published by another workflow. Like, I don't know if it's like technically feasible or plausible, but we could check, like, is this workflow that uploads artifacts, is it used as a workflow run of another? Does it trigger another workflow to run that then downloads this artifact? But that would be probably a pain, and also it wouldn't catch a case that I haven't seen, I believe, but that it likely exists, where someone has a workflow to build the artifact, but then they just download the artifact and publish it manually on their laptop, which would be a bit of a weird situation, but probably exists.
Just, I think at least several people on this call are already aware, but just in case someone isn't, this whole business about pinning or not pinning is different with, say, the NPM guidance from OpenSSF, which basically says if you're doing an application, yes, please pin. If you're doing a library, please never pin. Because if you pin at each library and there's, say, 10 or 12 tiers down, it creates a speed of light problem where each library has to update before the next one does with the next, and it may be years, if ever, a vulnerable component's updated.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, just to clarify, like the pinning and the pinning here is just regarding, shall we say, build time dependencies in workflows. So your package JSON that is just published, that can remain just version pinned, and that's absolutely fine.
Okay, these are just for the workflows. I'm sorry. Yes,
exactly. Yeah, it's strictly for to ensure that your CI/CD doesn't get compromised. So it's just like for runtime, build time, dependencies that need to be, that should be hash pinned. That's it.
Okay, why don't I say in the selection of it's not just it's not just running somewhere within the workflow, it's selecting the workflow to run. Did I understand you correctly?
I'm not sure I understood you correctly.
Okay, the issue isn't, hey, in your workflow there's an unpinned dependency somewhere. The issue here is I'm running the underlying code that's running the workflow. I didn't pin which workflow to run.
I believe like that's clarify a bit the language. My understanding is that when you do an npm publish, for example, the package JSON isn't really interpreted. It's just bundled it in with the package and shipped off. So that can be version pinned, range pinned, whatever. Have fun. We know Scorecard doesn't care. It's just the dependencies that you require to build your package in other languages, the actions that you run prior to doing an npm publish, all the things that you do in order to publish, those should be pinned. So everything that's going on inside your GitHub runner should be pinned. But the actual package that is then submitted can be pinned or unpinned or whatever you think best. It's just
okay,
like
I think I understand you. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, thank you for the clarification.
No worries.
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, I think in any case like this where there's an action or you know a state where Scorecard can't determine if it's safe or not, honestly, I feel like it should lean towards not deducting score for it. I think any time that Scorecard produces a low score for somebody's project, and they look at it and they see, oh, what I'm doing is perfectly safe and Scorecard is wrong, that Scorecard loses credibility. And this is another case of that, where I have workflows in my GitHub repository and they are read-only, and I don't want to deal with pinning my actions by hash. Scorecard is telling me that I'm doing things wrong. Like, that makes me think, oh, Scorecard is a not a useful tool. So while there are situations where you could get around this and Scorecard won't detect it, that's something we can call in documentation. That's something that we can put into best practices guides for how to use GitHub Actions safely. These are things that you need to watch out for. But I think that in general, like having Scorecard lean towards not punishing people in situations where it's not correct, that is good. Now that's counterintuitive to saying like, oh, scorecard should be aiming for like the most secure configuration possible. So I think that there's that contention there, and we always have, there's a balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of the Ghost upstream team can tell you like maintainer feedback and false positives is a big problem with adopting scorecard. So I think, that's, I mean, there's the expression like don't let perfect be the enemy of good or something like that, where if this helps people start using scorecard more, pinning when it matters and not pinning when it doesn't. I know one person that comments on some of the issues a lot is trying to say like, maybe not from a security perspective does it matter if you pin, but like sometimes there's a stability aspect where if you're pinning your linter on like a major version and then they bump it and they bump a feature version and now there's a new linter. Like I've had repos break from pinning at like V3 of a certain linter. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying about, if we fail unless we're certain, then it builds trust that, when we do find something, it's something actionable and not just noise.
I think the problem is you have to figure out who your users are. I often talk about an auditor versus a developer. A developer doesn't want noisy tools that complains about things that aren't a problem. Someone who's concerned that, I am not sure I trust you at all. Give me really good confidence that this is okay. They're going to want to hear about the things that I can't be certain of. I think it's fine if the preference is, if we're not sure, we'll assume it's okay. But in that case, it probably is a good idea to write that down somewhere so we don't have to come back to keep having the argument. If we're not sure, we'll assume it's okay because we do not want to give false reports that there's a problem. Yeah, but throwing a warning doesn't help. Oh, okay. I mean, you can comment, but you still have to decide, since you have to put out a score, what's your default score? Yeah, you could put out a warning that says, I can't tell, therefore I'll give you that. That's actually not a bad compromise, but I think it would be good to write that down.
All right. Yeah, so in the chat, Pedro's like, don't punish, but throw a warning message. That's something that, the same, well, maybe not the same check, but token permissions, people liked using certain permissions, and previously we would subtract 10 points if it wasn't on an allowed list of actions. So back in October that changed, and the solution was, I'm going to warn but not punish kind of thing. Yeah, I think there's a lot to discuss here, and like it's more than just this issue, this notion of like, what should scorecard do when they're not sure, or like when we're not sure. And the notion that David put forth of like, different people care about different things. So some static analysis tools have like a confidence level where like, should you say, only show me something that you're 100% sure on, only show me something that you're like 50% sure on. So maybe a flag is needed to say like, should I err on the side of caution? Should I err permissive? So that might help address the two different audiences.
I think if this information is useful, then it's worth scoring on. And if it's not worth scoring on, then it's not useful. And I lean towards the permissive approach here, which is that I don't think this read-only context where there are no secrets available is risky. And I can tell you that on my projects, I get a lot of pushback from the pinning because people believe that they prevent us from picking up upgrades that are going to be feature improvements and fixes to security problems. So I'd have an easier time selling it without this kind of source of noise.
So yeah, I just wanted to point out the idea, like, I don't, I believe we can not think only by like should be punished or not, but we can think of level of punishment as well. Like if you have like this really rare case of security risk, for example, for this upload artifacts, we can decrease a very low amount of score if we use a unpinned read-only permission. So even like 0.5 or 0.2, I don't know, just to make the score also represent these cases, but it wouldn't get any maintainer mad to have a 9 of a 10 or 9.5 of a 10. So I'm really looking forward for this idea. What do you guys think? Because Spencer said about this possibility of inside scorecard, you say, oh, do I want to have a restrict look, a restrict review of my security, or like a broader, more sensitive? But the thing is that the score are also seen by like external people, so they should be impartial. So everyone should get a reasonably impartial result. So I think having these small decreases kind of goes to this sense. Like they're not that unsafe, but like there's a really rare chance that this can be unsafe. So at least let's decrease something.
Cool. I'm sensing a sort of consensus here about like not focusing on every case, and if this is a nice usability feature that doesn't negatively impact the majority of users, then that's something that, you know, it sounds like there's support for going forward with, even if in this like 1 in, I don't know, 10,000, a million scenario, like it could negatively affect. So I think, you know, since there's that consensus, I'll make a note to make a comment on the issue after this meeting, and any like overflow discussion can go there. I'm also reading in the chat that Raghav says structured results could feel like they go a long way here. We'd create findings and a maintainer can choose which probes to ignore or use. And he says that he wishes there were a threat mapping or some sort of threat model for the GitHub API permission levels and what a given permission allows someone in a workflow to do. So if something like that existed, it would help if it could be in Scorecard.
Yeah, I feel that's maybe something that Scorecard could bring up, because I haven't found anything like this.
Yeah, the only thing is the link that Pedro just put in about GitHub apps and the permissions, that various permissions, like which endpoints they let you hit. All right. So moving on to the next topic, Ashish.
Hey everyone, my name is Ashish Kurmi and I'm from Step Security. For context, we build automated remediations for scorecard checks so that open source maintainers can get a higher scorecard score. And currently for 2 scorecard checks, for pinning of dependencies and for elevated token permissions, the scorecard action points to the Step Security app page. And I wanted to discuss a couple of potential updates we can make there to simplify the deployment of remediations. So if I can share my screen, I can walk everyone through the current experience and what we have in mind. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, let me stop mine, and I think you should be able to.
Okay. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a public repository in my account, and I have deployed a scorecard action, and it has created a bunch of code scanning findings. So if you look at one of these token permissions findings, right now it provides a link to this app.stepsecurity.io page. And when you go there, it automatically adds the permission. But based on our telemetry, we've realized that many open source maintainers, when they come here, they get confused. So what they're supposed to do after this is they should either click on copy, which will copy this remediated workflow, and then they can go ahead and create a pull request in their repository, or they can click on this other button. But we realize that open source maintainers come here, they get confused, and since we also know the URL that was visited, oftentimes we see that the deployment, the remediation is not deployed. So the proposal here is that we already provide a button called create a pull request. So when users go here, we take the repository as an input, and we figure out all the ways in which we can actually improve the scorecard score on behalf of the maintainer. So we analyze the repository and we say that like we can fix token permission in these files. We can also pin scorecard actions in these files and so on. And in addition, we also deploy the scorecard action itself if it is not present. And maintainers can pick and choose. So for example, if they don't want to pin their dependencies, they can just uncheck this option, or they can like selectively choose what they want to deploy. And they can click on this create pull request button. And what this will do is this will make these changes on behalf of the developer and create a pull request in their repository, which they can then review and like merge it if everything looks good to them. So in this case, we are basically simplifying the remediation workflow where developers don't have to copy paste things, and an entire experience is quite streamlined. So the proposal that we're thinking is, when someone clicks on this link, instead of showing this as a default view, we can show them this as a default view, where they will be able to see all the findings. And we'll provide a button here so that if they just want to fix that particular file, they can go back to this view and copy paste it. And the idea is that, hopefully, since we are simplifying the way someone can deploy these remediations, this will actually, improve their scorecard score. So yeah, I wanted to open up the floor and, ask and get your feedback if someone has any concerns, questions, feedback on this proposed change.
So I guess my thought is that we're showing these links as a remediation for, I guess, a specific problem. So can we go to this new page and people can uncheck and check certain things? If we're directing them to the dashboard from, let's say, a token pinning issue, is it possible to only have, I guess, the token permission checks on by default, and then people can enable more? So like instead of like everything being enabled, does it make sense that like if someone clicks a link from a token permission comment, then it's just recommending token permissions by default?
Yeah, that's a good point, and that is certainly we can do that. So when someone clicks on this button, we'll only show by default we'll only show them token permission for this file, and we can keep everything unchecked, or we can hide that. We can hide all the other recommendations. Yeah, that is something that we can do that.
Because I still think it's very convenient for people to be able to fix multiple things at once. So like if there were a way to say like, this is the page and like we're going to generate a pull request for this, and then allowing people to click those other boxes instead of making them unclick certain boxes. I think that works a little better. But yeah, I think the auto-generated PR thing is super nice from a usability perspective. And I wouldn't be opposed to changing the link of like which remediation page they're landing on.
Yeah, that's good feedback. And this will not require any changes in Scorecard. So we can update this page itself so that it will automatically take them to the pull request experience.
Yeah, anything that we can do to help people actually use this. In fact, I've been pointing people to the main open scorecard page, but that probably isn't really the right place. So if they want to install the tool, that's great. If they just want to turn on an action.
Yeah, Raghav.
Hey, so if this tool produces like patches, it may be something that the like scorecard action could or something that could play well with scorecard action. Yeah.
I think
yeah.
that's where Ashish started from, like in the code scanning dashboard that you get to from the results of scorecard action uploads.
So right now for token permissions and pinning of dependencies, it does provide a link. Users can go there and then basically fix those issues. So already integrated for those two checks.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I was thinking of like in actions there may be a way of like when an action runs or like creates a annotation on a pull request, that there may be a way of like doing like a patch suggestion or something. I was curious if that was considered, or if that's even possible. I'm not sure, but I think it is.
So scorecard has like a run on pull request option. I don't think it's overly supported right now. But like potentially I could see something there. I just don't know how that would integrate with. I mean, does Step Security have like a GitHub app that could sort of catch that?
So it's actually based on a project called Secure Repo. It's an open source project by Step Security. I can certainly look into it and I can see how, if it is feasible or not. Right now, there are APIs, that generate this patch, but I'm not sure if that would be the right model. As if you want to generate the patch, then there'll be an API dependency based on the current model, I think.
All right, Choco?
Yeah, kind of a related question, but currently, if to only the maintainer can create a pull request, right? Do you have any plans of like any contributors be able to create a PR?
Yeah, so we certainly want to make sure that people don't spam this on the repos that they don't own. So for someone to use this portal, they need to log in, and we only need public information. So we only need their GitHub account, and then for them to be able to create a pull request, they need to be a maintainer. So we look at their repo and make sure that they indeed have access to their repo, and then only they'll be able to create a pull request. Otherwise, they won't be able to do that.
Okay, yeah, your concern is valid. Okay, thanks.
Are people still able to generate the diff if they're not logged in and then copy and paste it themselves? Like if they didn't want to log in with GitHub?
Yeah, that's a good point. So they can certainly use this experience. This experience does not, because we are just generating the diff. We also support a preview feature. So if you come here and you analyze the repo, for example, if you don't want to create a pull request, one can also generate a preview, and these previews are generated in our bot account. So maybe we can enable this feature wherein someone can generate a preview, not rely on the fact that the user needs to be a maintainer, but anyone should be able to do this. Or the other option is we actually take them to this page, wherein they can see the fix and just copy paste it. So this preview is generated under our bot account, and we are not really spamming that repository.
Okay, yeah, I mean, as long as there's some sort of workflow, and even if it's this existing page for people that's not signed in, I think that's like a usability perspective from like people that don't want to sign in. But yeah, in general, I think this sounds pretty good. Lucas?
Spencer's earlier point about the context of the particular problem that's being reported on makes me realize that it may be confusing to users to see this screen, the analysis screen that has results related to a bunch of different items. And there may be usability problems related to that. you might want to actually activate an affordance to fix everything, something like that, or at least indicate in the user interface that this is everything over here, and this is the thing you came to see. For example, there might be a different background color, something like that.
Yeah, that's good feedback. So we can certainly make that change because we know why user is visiting this page and which file they are interested in fixing. So in the UI, we can clearly differentiate that, hey, you came here for this file, so you can just fix this file if you want. Or if you want other additional changes, here are no other fixes that you can fix that you can deploy automatically.
Cool. Yeah, I think that helps with, expectation, and like it's fine if you highlight it really big, like, hey, do you want to fix even more? Like, click here. But
Yeah.
if you follow a link for issue X, then in my opinion, it should by default do issue X. But yeah.
That's a good point. Cool. Thank you, everyone. I'll stop sharing.
Okay. I will start sharing again. But Jeff?
Yeah, if you can just click on that. More of a question, is this an unintended behavior from Scorecards? Kind of embarrassingly, we had been on a really old version of Scorecards on All-Star due to like the memory usage issue up until recently. So we like updated from, like a year ago to now. And if you go to the other link there, so we were getting, we used to get, if we got a failed score, the logs, and then we just display all the logs. But now all of a sudden we're getting a whole bunch of empty lines. We were getting, let's see, we're getting the check detail back and just displaying it all. And now we're looking at finding.location to see if that exists or not. Was this an intended change, or is there like something that I'm missing here with the logs coming? Maybe if you don't have the answer now, we can discuss offline, but I just wanted to bring it up.
So my first thought is that it probably has to do with structured results. We've been trying to make it so that nothing is changing if things aren't, like the experimental flag isn't on. But I would have to double check. That's where my first understanding is going. I know Laurent has already touched, say, like the token permissions check. So if this is just affecting token permissions, then I can look into that, see if like something slipped through the cracks, but I don't think it's an intentional change.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, just FYI then, yeah, if you take a look at that token permissions change, maybe that's some unintentional logs there. But yeah, we're filtering it, so it's we're okay on our side.
Cool. Yeah, no, thanks for bringing this up. Feel free to make an issue on the scorecard side of things, but I'll try to remember to.
Okay, I will do that. Thanks.
Cool, thanks. Next up, Michael.
Hey, sorry, just trying to sort out the audio feedback issues. Yeah, just a note to make sure that if there's any extra feedback on the proposed contributor model and next things to do next there, just to raise that up. I'd love for that to make some progress. So.
Well, I know folks have added some comments. I don't know if all of them, I guess, have been addressed, but yeah, it'd probably be helpful if you could throw a link into. I guess if we scroll down, it's there too. But yeah.
Also, wasn't the idea to take it to the TAC as a higher level OpenSSF thing before seeing if it was going to be scorecard specific?
Yeah, I think that's still the plan. I know Pedro was on here.
I can give a quick summary on that. I saw that from Dustin. So the discussion at the TAC level was, or the general consensus seems to be that people are supportive of requiring even requiring a community ladder at the OpenSSF level and saying you need to have something that lists how you become a maintainer and who the maintainers are. But most people thought that the proposed one, the scorecard proposed one, is like too detailed and just like too much to take for like all the projects or a small project. So I think the discussion is either it's going to be a much simpler template or no template at all, and just kind of like link out to other, examples, get the scorecard one if it's adopted. So for the scorecard community, I think that the TAC doesn't have specific feedback other than this is good and like continue. This is something that they're going to want to see in all the projects, and that you're going to, scorecard should be free to adopt this more detailed one if it makes sense for the community, and that's totally fine. But I think it's up to this community to kind of comment on and go over the proposed one, and then adopt it.
So I just added here to the minutes the link to the draft proposal. If you look at it the way it's written now, it is still very much written in terms of the broader OpenSSF, kind of like this is the template for everything. And I would be happy to change this and kind of remove all the OSSF fluff and make it very scorecard specific. But I also don't know if that is something that people want, or if you'd prefer that I hand this off and the maintainers take the lead on this. I'm happy to make the changes, but obviously I'm not the person that should make the final call.
Cool. Yeah, I left some comments. I know Jeff left a bunch as well as a few others. So I think, ultimately, yes, it is up to the maintainers, I guess, for final say, but it is good to have some sort of consensus. But yes, thank you for, proposing this ladder and then taking it to the TAC. Yeah.
So just to clarify, would you rather I just hand this off and you all take care of it? That'd be like, I'm perfectly fine, just clarifying whether I should work on this or not.
Yeah, let me read through that and I will get back to you. I think in the interest of time, just trying to get through these last two things, I think the 2 minutes are better spent on the last two bullet points, but I will get back to you. All right, David?
Yeah, so sorry for some procedural stuff, but basically I'm looking at their Google Doc for our notes and going, I don't really like that anybody in the world can just show up and edit and delete everything. That seems like a terrible idea. We really haven't had any problems, but I'd rather, I don't have any trouble with people coming by and making suggestions, but I'd rather not strangers just delete everything. So I'd like to lock it down slightly to anyone can make a suggestion. But that does mean that people here, I do want them to be able to take meeting notes, please. That seems like a very good idea. I did make an attempt to add as one of the editors, the OSS scorecard dev as a Google group. And it says that it seems to know that there's a number of members. So maybe have I done enough? And I can just switch this over to anyone with the edit can just can be a commenter instead. Is that going to be adequate for purpose?
I think that's good. I chatted with Amanda when she made the switch, and she also echoed that there haven't been problems so far, but other people have, mentioned like, hey, maybe having everyone be able to edit isn't the best idea. So
yeah, I would rather not find out about the problem after the fact. All right, and it looks like it is aware of the Google Groups membership. So I just switched it over now. Can anybody who's supposed to be anybody else here? Everybody able to edit? Who thinks they should be able to?
No, I just refreshed it. I mean, I'm not a maintainer, so it's perfectly fine, but it worked, and I now can only suggest, which is absolutely fine.
Okay, I mean it's okay for these are meeting notes. It's not the code itself. So if you're here, I'm as far as I know, we're fine with you editing the doc because the goal is really more to help counter the trolls.
Cool. Yeah, and you can Pedro join the Google group in question, and then you should have edit. But if you're fine with just viewing, that I think this is a better configuration.
No, absolutely. I mean, I can still suggest. You can still write
Okay.
stuff
Okay.
that people will see. So
All right.
it's perfectly fine.
Okay, if you're fine with that, then that's great. And if you want to join that group, that's great too. I can even hand add you. It's nobody here that I'm worried about. Just to make that clear. It's the people who make life less fun for everyone else. So that's it for that point. And the other one, Rose, we're at time. The critical projects working group has created a draft list. And I was just hoping to see if we can get that added to our list of all the projects who are getting reviewed weekly. I think most of these are already there, but I'm not sure what the process is to make the request. So I figured I'd ask here. Oh, they're all there. Oh, even better. Thank you.
Yeah,
Right.
it's fairly easy to add projects.
All right. Fabulous. Okay. Thank you so much. Well, that answers my question.
Cool. The only thing left to do is to pick a facilitator for next week. So if anyone wanted to volunteer, otherwise I will probably voluntold a maintainer. Yeah, thank you everyone for attending. If you want to facilitate, feel free to just mention it. I'll stick around for 30 seconds. But otherwise, see people in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
David, can I ask you a question about a PR as well?
Absolutely. I may not have the answer, but I will be
Cool.
I will try.
There was a PR that got sent to us from someone that has to do with a data license, saying like the data that Scorecard provides is licensed under some license. So we have you listed as a reviewer because this is over our head and should be made by someone at the Linux Foundation.
Okay, my apologies. I decided to get really sick in Vancouver, and then I've been trying to. Once I got better, then I've been trying to catch up. So a couple things have just not hit the top of queue. But tell you what, let me.
I can send you a link
in
too.
there. Yes, throw me the link. To be honest, I mean, are they claiming that Scorecards is using some data that we don't have rights to use?
I think they intend to consume the data, and they would like to know what terms they can consume Scorecard data with.
Ah, okay. That's fair. I mean, have we ever talked about that? We probably ought to make that clear if we haven't. I mean, frankly,
yeah, I think this was just someone going through the OpenSSF chats saying, like, if you haven't talked about open source data licensing, you'll see me opening some issues.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, our meeting is over, but maybe that sounds like if that's the issue. Okay, can you just throw the thing in chat and I'll
I'll
send
do
me an
that.
email.
Yeah, I'll send you an email.
Okay. I would if that's the issue, I would like to encourage folks to claim it CC0, but because we're not claiming ownership over the data produced by Scorecard to our knowledge.
Okay, yeah, and that's what's being proposed here is CC0. We just wanted to, get this on the Linux Foundation radar so that someone that's not us can make the decision.
Yeah. I mean, the challenge, of course, is that we're using data from GitHub, but I don't know that GitHub imposes any requirements or some such.
Okay.
So, okay, yeah. I will go take a peek. You're going to send me an email or something, and I will go. Excellent. All right, I'll go look.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks.
Let's try to get that to bed. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Well.